We are now live.
Live and direct. Good morning, good evening, good night. How are you feeling?
Villagers.
Let me just share it up. Well, you know you had to share it up. So let me just find the thing.
Yeah, let me find the thing.
So let's see. Where is this thing happening now with Fazir you're saying? That's
just so I had to share, we had to share it up because we had to make sure,
yeah.
it's full 100. It's full 100. So we had to,
boy.
know what I mean? Copy
Sorry, I
that
want you to
link
read it there. See now four. Good
we start
night, the four who watching. All let's share it up for we now. Let me get this thing going.
Yeah. Because we can't stick tonight. Tonight is SOE.
Night is space.
Is full 100. You understand?
Full 100.
Yeah. You
Full
understand?
100. Full 100.
Yeah, that screen. Yeah, the video there, Torian? That video?
I think so.
Well, you know this man is the trouble, man. So we're going on Fazir now.
Yeah.
Let's see. I hear you saying Fazir hot off the press to show me. What is really going on?
Yeah, so we hot off the press because he's saying, let me hear what he's saying.
If we could hear.
Whatever you like about the PNM or UNC or whatever, why would a government with a way, an avenue to get vaccine, why would a government not want to do that?
Well, I have no idea why they would not want to do it. But what we are seeing is that where other countries have gone directly to the supplier and not through the COVAX system, and they have been able to obtain their vaccines. I am aware that Pfizer vaccines entered this country, and a certain medical facility, their employees were vaccinated with Pfizer.
What?
We never heard of Pfizer.
Till a long time.
You know that for a fact, sorry?
I know that for
a fact.
Obviously, we can't independently verify that. But let's put it. Let's do that.
Right.
Right. So basically, what's going on there, right? Your boy Fazir was having a conversation with this individual. I don't know who he is, but that person was saying, well, it started off with the comment, why would the government not explore avenues? Which would mean that they were talking about the fact, and he was also raising the fact that they went to actual companies instead of talking through COVAX and talking to certain other heads and so on. So I think, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot in terms of the vaccination, because vaccination was started way too late. But let's see. Why did you tell yourself?
But we talk about it. Now remember, about three episodes in Heights Room before, we talked about this with the vaccine, that where I was telling earlier that it have a black market in Trinidad where you could get the vaccine from certain places. You understand what I'm saying? And this is what coming up here. And what they're pointing out is that you see the proper, the official system had to go through COVAX, but COVAX had this long pecking order and that kind of thing. So we had to take real long to get vaccine. But in the meantime, the private sector now going directly to the suppliers and getting Pfizer, getting whatever it is, and you just had to pay a little money and you could get the same thing too. So the problem now is, since that video, Dr. Parasram actually come out publicly and said that anybody who aware of this, it is illegal, and that they should let them know so that they would come in and take the necessary precautions. But hear what? This is some serious heights, fellas. This is some serious heights, because how you go zombie people who get the Pfizer because they're making all they look bad? You understand what I'm saying? This is a life or death situation. If people able to get Pfizer, it shouldn't be, hear what, this is illegal, we go come down all you. No, if all they're able to get Pfizer, come forward, work with let we try and get Pfizer for the rest of the population and that kind of thing. We had to be more forward thinking.
So question, if we believe in that this taking place,
right,
how we know that these people going straight to Pfizer and not going to another country or something like that, which is why the man saying it illegal?
No, well, it could be to another. Remember, they say they're going to the supplier, not necessarily Pfizer.
Who said that?
That is what the interview just say.
Right.
Yeah, the man said they went directly to the supplier. The supplier could be
not Pfizer. Who the supplier is going to be?
No, well, it could be the Serum Institute of India, whoever it is doing the manufacturing of it, right? Remember, going through COVAX is just our official work
said
order
it?
for them, you know.
Yeah,
Who said it is
You
illegal
understand?
though? Who said it is illegal though?
Dr. Parasram, I should have sent that video for you too,
Well,
boy.
I
You understand?
remember something a little while
That
ago
dropped this morning.
with Dr. Parashram saying, and
Hmm.
I don't remember exactly what was being said and what it was about, but I believe he was saying that there was permission given to private institutions to secure vaccines. I heard that probably a month or two ago. So I don't know if the story has changed. I swear I heard them say that when I was listening when they talked about vaccines. But then again, we'll have to do some research on this because, as I said, it's hot off the press. We didn't really get to talk about
Correct.
this before, so we're looking at this.
Right.
But it is definitely something that is going on where we first heard or never heard that there is Pfizer accessible in Trinidad and Tobago, because really and truly it ain't. It's accessible to people who within a circle where they know about it. It's not a thing for the public, right? But
Right.
the fact is that if it is that it was possible for these private
That is the
individuals
point.
to get it, how is it that a government can
That's it.
look at us and say that it is such a big rigmarole to get these vaccines that beyond their control, and because they were asked, the government was asked,
Correct.
what's going on with vaccines?
The government have no money. COVAX is a free thing. It's donation, isn't it?
Right, exactly.
Well,
So these people want to pay money.
Well, you
exactly.
see,
So it's as a money thing, obviously. But besides that, now we are asking, okay, so is it that we are spending 0.9 billion in billion, right? Was the figure 0.9 billion, right? In COVID,
like a gunshot, boy.
for COVID, right? 0.9 billion for COVID, and at no point anything was put. Like, I mean, if it is money, have to pay. I mean, I'm not saying money, have to pay, but is it that it's just like we can't like? I mean, let's talk about it with the public, really, because people, they came and said they didn't know nothing about nothing when it comes to anyhow.
No, but here the height say Larry Tex now make a good point there. COVAX, you have to pay for that, you know. You understand what I'm saying? Don't get tapped. You have to pay
but
for
it is subsidized. Okay,
it's subsidized. But let me make this point. Two things. And I want to be fair to the government, because Dr. Rowley did come up on news, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, when he did a consultation with the nation and said, listen, the issue is not the money to purchase these things. The problem is the availability. You understand? So to me, I don't think is completely an issue of money. I think the issue is, listen, let me give you all a perspective. It's 10 years I working in procurement field in engineering in Trinidad. Trinidad procurement backward like no other. Up to now, we don't have no e-tender system to run public procurement. People can't tell me about procurement. I could tell all you understand? And just to run e-tenders for a project that I had done just before I left Trinidad was a nightmare. You understand what I'm saying? They are attempting to rectify a lot of these things with the new procurement legislation and that kind of thing. But like with everything else, it's taken a million years. And the health sector would be even worse. So what you would find with the health sector is they will have to go through existing procurement frameworks, which will either be NIDCO or NIPDEC or UDICOT or whatever state agencies that structure to do procurement, and they will have to now engage things in order to get that done. So understand where that mafia coming from, but the private people now ain't had to go through that. Them just say, listen, if we had to make money and we are a medical institution, because it seems like it's a medical institution the man referring to, and we had to get a mass vaccination. We can't wait to get these COVAX shipments. Here what? We have suppliers, we have connections, we could get it at a good market rate. We have connections to the Serum Institute of India and whoever it is manufacturing in Belgium and so on. We want a shipment. Boom, you bring it down. Money talks, you understand? So the question is, why is the health people not talking to these people and in a different, and that what we talk about today, SOE, is a kind of heavy hand approach to the COVID thing rather than a complimentary. So instead of running on these people and say, listen, all what they're doing illegal and whatnot, listen, the people seem to have better technology that given access. The nation needs vaccines. Right. Fellas, come forward. Let we pull it out of the black market. Show we how it is you're getting it done. And let we work with you in order to bring in whatever and thing. And let we end this vaccine thing. That my out of the press thing.
All right, brother. Hear you loud and clear. Well, since we're on the topic of the vaccine and we talk on the local issues, that we move a little sidestep now into this issue of the CEO of NWRHA, Davlin Thomas, and that situation. Now, as far as I am aware, what we have there is a real I don't know, like, what can I say? I would say a misdirection on the part of the NCRHA. This has to do with the this has to do with the Cuba facility. Now, the Cuba facility, for those who may not be aware or don't remember or are confused, that is the, if you want to call it, premier COVID facility at this point in time, because that is the whole Cuba hospital, right, that we all know on the highway being utilized for COVID patients, right? And there was a release given out by, I believe, a few sources, one being the UNC, where they said that that there has been the movement of certain officers out of the Cuba facility because they contested certain things, right? So that goes to show that there's a bit of a political slant to what is being done, because the UNC jump on it, obviously, right? But we can see now that something really amiss, because at first it's like, what really went on there? But something really amiss when it is when you have a CEO of a regional health authority saying that because they were changed, because these senior doctors were moved, there were 60% less deaths in Cuba. So are you trying to say that these doctors were so inept, right, that they were killing people? Because 60% is not 1.2%, right? And you say now you're trying to tell me that it was 60% less deaths, and yet the figures for the nation when it comes to COVID deaths has not really changed. When it comes to that statistic of deaths, it has not really shown a drop. So the major facility where you're taking the patients who need the highest amount of care, you're trying to tell me that death went down by 60 and the whole country, so that means it would have gone up in other places. I don't know. Like, it's very strange now, and it goes to show that there is some kind of political side to this whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not. It is the politicizing of COVID-19 in Trinidad and Tobago, and that is very sad.
Yeah.
Madness.
And you see, on top of that, Cutter, you don't understand, as Joma pointed out, the Medical Association jumped on the case one time, you understand, because this they ain't going to tolerate that, you understand what I'm saying? So 60% is ridiculous. The man clearly don't know what he's talking about. And as I was telling earlier, I know about the man in another dispensation. The man is the worst. You understand what I'm saying? I go say flat. The man is the worst. And the numbers the man come out with is showing that. But we have we have a public system whereby many CEOs and managing directors that are appointed of these organizations are political appointees. You understand? I can tell you I had to deal with a couple of them. You understand what I'm saying? And while some of them, you really think, have the experience and qualification, it has some of them that is just waste of time, and them fellas just there to do what politics say to do. And the reality is that we have a sad situation now of it interacting with a very serious situation with the public that affecting doctors. And Parasram didn't back him. Parasram said, boy, I really don't know what you're talking about. You understand what I'm saying? In the article there, it said that. You understand? So to me, it's a matter of them trip, because understand this, Cutter, if he's the CEO, he's the one who have to sign off on these same doctors' performance appraisals and that kind of thing, So the doctors are right to get the medical association involved there, to get the lawyers involved and that kind of thing, so that they understand that, you know what I mean? Let we be fair, because this is the industrial court situation, you understand what I'm saying? That are proper industrial relations in dealing with these matters. You can't just move people around just because you feel like it.
Yeah, but as we are seeing, right, there are political appointments all the time, but you need to put qualified people, right, with some form of impartiality to a certain degree, at least.
Yeah, but why, Cutter?
In these roles?
Why? Because they don't have to. You understand what I'm saying? I ain't gonna call names. You understand what I'm saying? But I tell you, I deal with men. You understand that men just awarding contract. Awarding contract. They get instruction. You understand what I'm saying? And they want you to the line. You understand? So you know what I mean?
Speaking of contract, 150 for a bag of cement, and I see people saying they have
Well, boy.
they have bag of cement for sale. How much you calling? What's your price? Call your price. I have a bag of cement. What you offer it?
For your price.
Well,
So where's that one,
House
Leslie?
and land.
Use the
House and
construction man. Use the construction man. What is that one? That's a normal price for cement?
no, well, let me give you a little background on this. Cement before, when it had a hike in cement prices, and in the country, we had to deal with construction claims from contractors, coming in with high cement prices of 6% and that kind of thing. The price at that time was $45 a bag, and that was 2 years ago. You understand? So when you reaching $150 a bag,
Yeah,
oh
but
gosh.
TCL shut down though. They're producing nothing right now, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, but oh gosh, 100. So who gonna bear that story and the taxpayers, boy? Oh gosh, boy,
But if TCL shut down, what TCL shut down for? They shut down for COVID.
But it's COVID, so the question is, where these men getting cement from? If they ain't getting it from TCL,
they must have had stocks in the warehouse, in the back of the warehouse.
Well, I hope. Well, hold on. Where Butch? I know Butch usually, and Butch from the Bureau of Standards. I hope the Bureau of Standards shutting down faulty cement and thing, because you understand TCL has certain standards. You can't get no mafia cement from the back of some container and throw in the people 8-story building. So I hope the Bureau of Standards checking all of this and whatnot. And $150 of cement, the money matter. You understand?
I guess
well,
so.
see, we're moving into the future here now. Slowly but surely, and Samakal just bought Monte Placa. Is that how you pronounce it? Solar farms in the Dominican Republic. Is that?
Yeah,
is that correct?
That is good. But the thing is, this is not Samakal first dip into the solar energy. Clean energy, I should say, in 2018. They buy a wind park in Costa Rica. So Samakal been looking to the future for some time now.
But is it for our future or is it for just their future?
Why you asking me? I look like an Samakal to you?
Right. Like an Samakal.
No, well, there it is. You understand? Because at the end of the day, them understand that you have to diversify portfolio. I could tell you the Ministry of Energy trying to diversify for over 10 years now and can't diversify yet. You understand? But clearly the private sector is showing how easy it is to diversify things. Now, I ain't saying it easy in the sense of, just get up all morning and the government could diversify. But where there's a will, there's a way. And if it is they looking to diversify and, you have renewable energy masters running in UTT, I could tell you, understand, and over 70 students a year when you have lockjack suffering to get 2-3 people for a certain cohort. You understand? So the demand is there in the country. People want to learn about renewable energy and this kind of thing. And Samakal willing to invest. Come now, man. Let we roll again.
Let's get there.
Let's get there. Let we make it happen. You understand? But they will have to. But they will still first have to deal with the hurdle that in TNTech Section 53 of the regulated RAC Act makes renewable energy and contributing to the grid illegal. So you have to cross that boundary first. It's illegal. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
the price of solar power panels, as Nick is saying, there is through the roof, right? But in places like Barbados, it is subsidized because the price of electricity here is very cheap. So what
13 times cheaper than the rest of the Caribbean.
So we So why we want solar for? Why we said in the future with solar for when we get in that, and people don't realize, just like the subsidy on the gas in your car, people don't realize that this is not the price that these things are, Nadred. Man? Forget how things sweet.
Is a triple subsidy, Cutter. Let me carry it further. Is a triple subsidy. We have whatever the name, the power gen down in Labrie, right? Operating off natural gas. Natural gas is subsidized to NGC. NGC then subsidizes to TNTech. TNTech then subsidizes to the customer via rate. So it's what you call the triple subsidy effect, which skews the market. So that is why we are 13 times cheaper than Barbados and Antigua and all of those other places. So why go solar?
And yet, we've seen pressure because speaking of not cheaper, $18 for Chaguanas to Sando taxi fare increase by $4. More than 60% of taxi drivers across TNT have increased their fares during this pandemic time because, I mean, there's a whole cutback on how much they can have. You know, it's a hard time for the taxi drivers. So we have $3 increase. We have $1 increase. We have $4 increase. The traveling man, how we moving? You understand? Hey, people I realize, a lot of people who belong to a certain, you know, livelihood, a certain lifestyle, a certain class and thing in Trinidad don't realize what the person who has to travel going through. They don't understand the person who is looking forward to building an extension, right? Going through these people, you know, and people who you talking about people who didn't have work for a while, who most likely to travel to their work, right? If you understand what I'm saying, yeah, people who think about it. This average person is he's a waiter, right? Right? That's what he does. He ain't have work for a long while. When he does have work now, he had to pay $4 more to go to where he had to go, right? And then $150 for the bag of cement to build. To build what you have
to block up your downstairs feature and to, you know what I mean?
It's crazy when you think about what certain people face now with the change in their, you know, their budgets for what they're accustomed to. It's crazy. Crazy. And well, obviously, we want to get into, you know, easing into this topic of the SOE, which we are really here to talk about, and we are going to bring on our guest in a minute or two. And the first thing I would want to bring up is the fact that we had the public holiday of Indian Arrival Day on Monday. And it was Monday? Yeah, Monday.
Yeah. And you know when you arrive, bro?
Dog. Ease manner. It's home at home every day, right? Right? And then we have Corpus Christi tomorrow. All right. Now, with that, we had the extended, the extended curfew. If you want to, right? The extended curfew, right? Less time you can be outside. 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. partner. People playing ball by the Beatam on the highway.
I see that.
Right? No cars on the road. So men sweating on the Beatam highway. Now that is something, you know, really, you know, unheard of in my lifetime that I could remember, to not be able to go outside, right? And again,
I thought you mean sweating on the highway, because that's unheard of for me too.
Well, yes, that as well, right? Although, I mean, I could try it now and then right here too, but I will have me on the papers next day. But the thing is that these are measures that are being taken all over the Caribbean. Jamaica, you know, St. Vincent had a very dread curfew, I believe. St. Vincent, I believe it was. And, you know, we really have to look at these things not in our bubble, because people will be like, you know, they might beat up about it, because these are the measures people are taking. However, I was kind of confused as to why we are even having holidays during our SOE, because we are having these curfews because it's a public holiday, and the public and my only reason for thinking about that is because we stopped vaccinating on the public holidays, and it's 2 public holidays, you know, back to back pretty much, in a time where, you know, we should be vaccinated right through now, because you're looking at 5,000 vaccines per day, I believe, 5,000 vaccines per day or something like that. You're looking at a few thousand people. Well, Barbados did a 24-hour curfew. You hear all about these things, and you know, it really begs the question of what really is the nature of the state of emergency. Because I would think that if we're in a state of emergency, I would think that we wouldn't need to have a public holiday per se. But again, that is up for debate, I guess. But to really bring context and knowledge about this topic, I would really need someone with specialized skills. All right. And that's why we have our friend tonight, Fayola Sandy. Right? Fayola is an attorney at law. She has worked in the area of civil and criminal law. And she's here with us tonight. Yes, fix up there, Davido. Are we seeing you? Right. She's here with us tonight. Thank you for coming onto the show. Fayola, how are you? You hearing me there? You hearing us? You hearing us?
I think so.
You hearing us, Viola? There's a little lag.
I think there's a big lag.
There's a big lag taking place.
All right, let me pause for 2 seconds here.
Yeah. She's saying good night there.
What she was. Let me see if I can bring she back.
Well, you know how this is go.
The live. We're hearing you now, I think. Viola.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit slow.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, good night. Thanks for inviting me on.
I will take off my camera for a while if that would help probably.
Okay. Hearing us now, Viola? Are we in sync now? I guess not. Okay, hang on a second.
Okay, hi. So everybody can see and hear me now.
Good night.
Yeah,
Are you hearing us? Are you hearing us, Viola?
I'm hearing you. Yeah, I'm hearing you really well.
Okay.
I'm
right.
I'm seeing that I'm having a delayed response.
Okay, well, we're hearing you. If anything, we might ask you to stop the cam a little later because that might solve the issue.
Sure.
I think sometimes that happened with our one of our guests a few weeks ago. The same thing was happening. So we're sorry about that. Viola,
That's okay.
just to give a little context and a little background on yourself for the audience. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into your field? Like what was part of your journey to being a lawyer? A little bit about it. You know, when you became a lawyer, all of that, a little something.
A little something. Okay, well, essentially, to be honest, this was not my career path. I did psychology first.
Okay.
And, well, I lived in the UK for a period of time, and I came back home. And when I came here, I decided that I would do law because I have a sister who is an attorney already.
Right.
So that's why. And I think everybody thought it was a really good career choice, as I have a real problem. What is the word? I have a problem arguing my point then. So my whole family was like, yes, this is possibly the profession for you.
Yeah, you have a problem always being right. That's what you're trying to say.
Well, I hope, yeah.
Yeah, here's one.
That's probably, for want of a better word.
Well, I think, I personally think that it is your calling because I know you and how you just take on certain issues and how you carry about yourself about when it comes to certain things on Facebook and things, but I never really get to hear expound on it like tonight. So we're looking forward to hearing a little bit about that. But tell us, Viola. I think Torren, you could probably come back on. I think we okay there for now. Viola, when it comes to the issue of the SOE, right? There's so much people say when it comes to curfew, do we need the curfew? Do we need the SOE to have the curfew and all of this? And what is a SOE? So you tell us, how can you explain to us what exactly is a state of emergency?
Well, disclaimer, when I was invited on, I really didn't appreciate the amount of jurisprudential arguments surrounding this issue. But this is a really serious issue that touches a lot on constitutionality and human rights. So I think, like, before we could even discuss essentially what a state of emergency is, I think, it might be presumptuous of me to assume that we first have to establish that we are in a democracy and what that means, and essentially what are the branches of government that operate in a democracy. So Trinidad and Tobago is considered a parliamentary democracy, and as a result of that, we would have the three branches of government. The three branches of government that operate are the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. They are all separate. They are all separate branches of government that seek to work together to ensure always being represented. So the legislature is essentially the branch of government that would be responsible for making legislation or new laws. The executive is essentially the branch of government that would administer those laws. And thirdly, the judiciary is there to interpret the law. So in a democracy as in Trinidad, these are the branches of government that exist, and they are there to ensure essentially a very old principle of the rule of law. Separation of powers is a principle of the rule of law, which ensures that democracies operate as they should. So essentially, when we are talking about a state of emergency, before we even get to the state of emergency, we need to understand like what exactly is a state of emergency, because in my task of trying to define the state of emergency, I realized that there's no definition per se.
Right, there's no real strict definition
well, in
for the state of emergency.
In 1931, the UK Privy Council would have ruled that a state of emergency doesn't permit of any exact definition, right? And I guess after having read around the subject, one could appreciate, after I hope you could appreciate why, because emergencies are exigencies that we cannot always anticipate. So to have a definition would be to stymie a response then from whatever power needs to respond to the emergency, right? So to define it would be to basically kind of restrict its use.
Right.
But just for clarity's sake now, I think there are certain features. Okay, sorry.
Right. Yeah. So in the context,
but
in the context of Trinidad, in the context of Trinidad and how we interpret the SOE, because we understand, depending on the style of governance that you have around the world, SOE may mean different things. Even the definition of SOE may mean different things. So in the context of Trinidad,
sorry, Torian, I can't hear. I'm hearing only.
You're not hearing him?
I'm hearing him break. He's breaking out.
Okay. Fayola, take off see if you can go to the bottom and stop cam. I think if you stop your cam, things might help. Talk
okay,
there, Lassie.
Yeah, you hearing Fayola?
Please. Okay, here.
Hearing better, anything? You hearing him? Anything? Hearing? You hearing me?
Yeah.
I'm hearing you very clearly.
We're not hearing.
But I'm hearing that Lassie is possibly going in and out.
Okay. That's not. I hear you fine, Lassie. All your
do you want to repeat
bear with us. Yeah, but Lassie.
So let me stop and see. All right, you hearing now?
She's not hearing you that well.
I'm hearing you right now. I'm hearing you now.
Okay, good. Yeah, it has to do with the bandwidth cutter. Perfect. Right. So what I'm saying, Fayola, is that in the context of Trinidad, right, which would be a very different case to different places around the world, depending on government type and that kind of thing. Would you say then that perhaps a reasonable interpretation of SOE for us could be probably, and this was one that I got from the UN, exceptional situations that justify some limitation on rights / freedoms?
Yeah.
Would you say that's reasonable?
I would say that is reasonable, and I think that is accurate as well. We have to. That is what I had to do eventually to get an understanding of it. You have to look international instruments. So, not only are we governed by our local domestic legislation, but we also have international obligations, right? And those international obligations essentially would basically stipulate in what circumstances a nation state can depart from the normal legal and constitutional order, right? And how they say in what circumstances that happens. So essentially what a state of emergency essentially encapsulates is the idea that when a threat to the life of a nation exists, essentially extraordinary measures which would depart from the normal legal and constitutional order, those things may be required to cope with the threat, right? So these measures, but the fundamental part about all of this is that these things are not essentially done in a vacuum, in that there must be, the international law is very certain on it. There must be a sense of urgency, there must be a sense of concreteness, and there must have a temporal element to it, meaning that it cannot be extended for very arbitrary and long periods of time. right?
Right.
I hear you.
Okay, so just to bring that into the context of Trinidad and Tobago, essentially, Part 3 of the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago contains provisions allowing for extraordinary measures. Okay?
Right.
Right.
And those
So
provisions,
COVID
those
is that
extraordinary measures, yeah. So those extraordinary measures are really only in times of emergency. So when you look at Part 3 of the Constitution, you will see Part 3, it starts, Section 7 stipulates that a power is given to the president, and that power is an emergency power, right? That they may require to deal with a threat, essentially. And then Section 8(1) will then state that the president can proclaim a state of emergency. So that is the act of proclamation, right? However, that proclamation cannot just be in a vacuum once more. That proclamation has to contain certain declarations. And that is that the president is satisfied that a public emergency has arisen and that the president must also declare essentially the nature of the public emergency.
Right. So, and there was a proclamation by Paul weeks, I believe.
Yes, there was a proclamation.
Right. So I mean, that goes without saying. Now, something that again I don't know exact if you would be able to answer, because again, some of these things, as you say, you have to dig back deep to really figure out certain aspects of it. But is it that in Trinidad, in order for us to have curfew, we need to have a state of emergency?
Well, essentially, no. Because, okay, let me caveat that. Essentially, when I have looked at my state of emergency and I've been looking at curfew, sometimes they may have been used interchangeably, but the consequences don't seem to be the same. So essentially, in a state of emergency, our rights are, well, the word suspended is used a lot. Our human rights are suspended. Essentially, our constitutional rights are suspended. But suspended, I think, is the wrong word.
Okay.
I think that it is modified, and it is modified to the extent that it deals with the exigency, all right? Or the emergency, or the threat.
Because suspended would mean like human rights go, but it's like we still have human rights to some degree, but it's modified. I understand what they're saying there.
There is still an oversight, I believe, of the court. I think there are two arguments when it comes to state of emergency. Some people think that it is outside of the legal regime, and there are arguments that it is within. I think that it is within. It is within it. There is the Constitution allows for it. It is within the legal regime, and therefore it would be subject to review.
Right.
So
definitely.
The issue is because of the emergency nature of it. This is the issue. I think it is because a real emergency has been identified, which threatens the nation as a whole.
In our lifetime, from what I see, is only when we have state of emergencies, we have curfews. Whereas I think in nations where, like, they would have emergencies in terms of their history when it comes to war and all these kind of things, like, the world wars and so on, these European countries and so on. They, like in Belgium and right now, they don't have a state of emergency, but they just throw a curfew on the people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if in other places in the Caribbean, if the curfew is synonymous with the state of emergency, and I guess it isn't, but it just seems
I can't say that it is. I don't think that it is. I think that a curfew, if we are taking it in its normal everyday meaning, is like a certain stipulated period of time for which you cannot be out or for which you have to stay in a certain area.
Right.
And a state of emergency, then we have laws here which suspends.
Right.
Like the use of that word, but essentially it modifies your rights under the Constitution.
All right, Leslie, take it away there.
Yeah, so Fayola, just to sort of frame the discussion in looking at this definition down here, I want to start by understanding exceptional situations, limitations, and then rights or freedoms. And to bring in a case in the Philippines where they've to me, they've carried that state of emergency well beyond, those rights and freedoms. Starting in
Wow.
exceptional situations, what would what you think in this situation justify the exceptional situations? Is it related to the number of deaths that we're seeing, the number of cases, or the number of COVID cases? Because the question of what is going to prompt the release of the SOE is interesting to, I think, the national public. Because then if it's deaths or if it's cases, then when that starts to drop, we
All right.
want to
So I
segue.
think Fayola not hearing Leslie properly.
And
It-
what?
right,
And this
right.
question
But
seems so interesting. I heard something about the Philippines.
But he was
Yes.
saying, I think his main thing was, what extenuating circumstances do you think triggered the SOE, and is it justified? So Leslie, you're asking her her professional opinion in that regard, right?
Yes, correct.
You're asking her. So you're looking at the words exceptional,
Exceptional
justified.
situation. What defines it in terms of, is it deaths or is it cases? And whatever defines that, is it that we could use that as a benchmark when we want to say, well, let's get out of the SOE now. So in other words, when the deaths reach a certain reduced amount or the cases reaches a reduced amount, how do you define exceptional situations?
Okay. So, firstly, I think the Constitution deals with the extension of it, right? So, Section 10 of the Constitution would say that the state of emergency can be extended from time to time. However, it cannot be extended past a 3-month period, and in aggregate, it cannot exceed a 6-month period, right? Now, what you're asking is in terms of whether or not the state of emergency, what were they alleging was the extenuating circumstance?
Yeah, the extreme circumstances.
Well, I think...
And in other words, is there any type of benchmark besides the benchmarks that will be set after this? Do we have some kind of benchmark within the legality of it that says, okay, this is the kind of thing that is it deaths? Is it national security? Is it that
cases, COVID cases?
Is it cases of COVID, in this case COVID, or any type of plague per se, right? As they would say, or is it that generally, on the flip side, can the powers that be say we're in a state of emergency because we feel like that, and then that brings us into the discussion about the last state of emergency in a bit. So, do you think that, would you say, in your professional opinion, it is really directly up to the discretion of the powers that be and the president to say state of emergency or not? Like,
well,
if they
unfortunately,
feel like it.
Well, it's not if they feel like it. You see, that's the point. It's not if they feel like it. But the way that it is set up, that emergency power is available for use, right? Now, the executive is going to argue that they are in the most advantageous state to determine whether or not we need to be in a state of emergency. They are going to say, listen, we are the executive. We have all of the information available to us. We know what power we have. We know what restrictions we are facing. Based on the information available to us, we do not have the power to adequately deal with this emergency. And as such, we are making a recommendation that the president proclaims a state of emergency. The president, based on the information given to them by the executive, can look at the information and then, based on that information, make a decision. Right? Now, the information put forward by the Prime Minister in this instance, and based on what I've read, I could be corrected, essentially is the upsurge in the number of cases, right?
Right.
Now,
Right.
Now, a state of emergency has to have a temporal component, meaning that it can't just be for an indefinite period of time, because we are moving from then a democracy into an authoritarian government, right? Our government has stipulated that the state of emergency will last for a 3-month period. In these circumstances, based on all of the information that I would have read so far, they can justify the state of emergency, because they can say, okay, so essentially, if we were to look at it like there's a state of emergency where we are under threat of terrorist attack. Now, because we cannot put any concrete date on that terrorist attack, because we do not know the urgency with which that terrorist attack is going to take place, we cannot then implement a state of emergency, because in those circumstances, we do not have all of the evidence available to us, right? And therefore, putting a state of emergency is going to be arbitrary, without concreteness, without a stipulated period of time to run. Yes?
Right.
So, in this circumstance, the government is going to say, listen, this is an ongoing issue. And in fact, the issue is ongoing to a point where it is getting so, out of our control. And as a result of that, we must now implement a state of emergency. Now, I read the Hansard of that. It was the 24th sitting of the Parliament. I read the debate in that. And, both sides had the opposition was not opposing the state of emergency based on what I read.
That is very commendable, I would say, looking at the track record of the opposition.
Right. No, because honestly, they would have probably been like, well, yeah, okay. But I think the issues that were brought up in that arena was essentially why we came to the position where a state of emergency was necessary, which was not something that was being debated at that point in time.
So
Fayola, there we have Leslie there.
Yeah,
I'm hearing
Fayola,
it very well.
You hearing? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So let me ask this question. If so that's an interesting bit of information to know that the SOE has to have that temporal component. So what that then tells me is that they have to set a limit to the SOE. So if they set a limit to the SOE in terms of time, then essentially we're not looking at the number of cases. Or can they, when this SOE finish, like we said, they go for the full 3 months and the cases and deaths is not where it needs to be, can they extend for another 3 months right after that until the deaths and thing comes down to where they need it to be?
Well, that would have to be something that would have to be justified in the circumstances. But from a common sense perspective, if it is that we are constantly in a position where, we are social distancing and the numbers keep going up, and we are social distancing, I don't know in a circumstance if that is a justifiable then means to the end, which is the solution. But so far, I guess they would be going off of what other governments would have done. And how that may have worked for them. Well, I think an important thing to consider, which I don't know, which I probably should have read before I came on, was essentially there are ways in which it can be reviewed.
Right.
So what you can have is checks and balances on the executive power, not immediately, of course, but in like a post hoc kind of scenario, where after the fact we come back to Parliament,
Right. And I'll tell you why that's so important, Fayola, because to me, I am still unclear what actual measurable reason they took to push us into the SOE. We know it was bad, but we were at stay-at-home orders before, which graduated to lockdown, which graduated to SOE, and you actually had the DOMA people meeting and asking for an extreme version of the SOE, which is a dangerous world, I think, to go into, because that is what they have in the Philippines, what they call enhanced community quarantine. So it's all sorts of fancy names.
What is that? What is that, Leslie? What is enhanced community quarantine?
So it's exactly what DOMA was asking for, an extreme version of the SOE. So to me, we're basically using the words SOE, but DOMA is saying that was when they were asking for the whole of Sunday to be curfewed. You understand what I'm saying? And they got pushback from the supermarkets authority saying, well, no, we don't want that because that's when we get our most amount of business clients and that kind of thing. So, I'll come to the Philippine case later on. But what I just want to get at is, what is the measurable number, be it either cases or deaths, that would have triggered them going into the SOE? And I'm saying that I don't know, and shouldn't we as a population know?
I think that may have been, I didn't recall reading any of that in the Hansard, but I'm sure that information might have been available as to what triggered it. The justification for its ongoing status, or the justification for calling it in the first instance, it seems to me to be in line with what emergency powers they do have to prevent against this issue. Now, I think the issue that might be upsetting to patients, is a situation where we feel like we're doing everything we could possibly do, and the situation itself is not getting any better. I think it's a bit demoralizing, but I don't know what else could have been. Well, I am not any
You
public
don't have
health official.
right.
I don't know.
It's not your background, but I mean, but it is commonplace for citizens to think about this and say, well, what it is really going on, because when you look at it, because when you look at it, because I more when it stop is one thing, that's definitely obviously that is the main thing, but when you coming back to what you said, Leslie, you saying we don't know what is the measurable
exactly
the trigger, what is the quantifiable trigger for the SOE, because from what I gauge, and I remember I be just watching what going on and thinking I don't really know what's going on because I'm not there in the cabinet with them, right? But it seems to me that the way the authorities tackle the situation is such that, because from the onset since last year, people like Israel Khan and so on called for an SOE. They say they wrote in the papers and so on and saying time for the SOE. You understand? Because there's no way when they started the first lockdown, it's like there's no way you're going to get people to lock down themselves unless you lock them down legally, because they're not going to be able, because you cannot legally tell people you cannot go up the highway, which they were trying to do, and they got in hot water for that, because the police was stopping people on the highway last year when we had the first lockdown and telling people, you are from Gasparillo, why are you going up the road? That is not a good reason. Turn around on the flyover there and go home. And people,
and I'll tell you why that is so critical, Cutter. Is that, and we just got a question from one of the commenters there that hit the nail on the head. The reason, from my understanding, had to do with the capacity of the healthcare system, and that the healthcare system was approaching maximum, and that is why they did it. Now, why that is so important is that was the same reason that the Philippines used over a year ago. Them went on SOE since March last year. You understand what I'm saying? And they went on it because of the same reason. Now, what has happened is that it has freed up their healthcare system, so it's not as overburdened as it was before. But what has happened now is that Duterte is refusing to release the SOE because his reasoning for the original pushing into the SOE wasn't clear. So the UN and all of these agencies now are coming in and trying to come down on him and saying, listen, you need to release the SOE and you need to bring back things to normal because the hospitals are no longer at capacity.
Definitely. And that's really what's going on here. Continue.
So that's an international checks. There's the international covenants on civil and political rights. And there are international checks as well on, you have to measure, because I was talking to sending people back on the file. Right. So, I'm seeing a question by Ms. Maharaj. So essentially, that is illegal. So we have emergency regulations. The emergency regulations would stipulate what we can and we cannot do. What is the issue there is, what I think that what needs to be done, and I have been, is that our police officers need to get a code of practice. Practice that properly stipulate how they are to treat with the citizenry and how they are to treat on the whole with themselves, with the police station, with the reporting, with the diaries, with everything. It should be regulated basis so that everybody knows their rule and everybody their rule. If it is, we do not have a stipulated codes of practice for police. What do we see? If we don't have rules and we don't have regulations governing something, what happens is it is abused. Traditionally, that power is abused and is normally with power. So we know I have having done criminal law before. We know that police officers routinely abuse their power. I feel bad though, because in the past I have not acknowledged the fact that I have really been, one-sided in my critique of the police, and I think that is unfair because the police as well needs to be assisted. And when I speak to them after a while, and I speak to police officers about, the situation, they were like, yeah, but we want the situation resolved as well. A lot of them are also quite frustrated with the situation, wants everything to be more regulated, more streamlined, more ordered, So in that circumstance,
Definitely.
no. Once the emergency regulations cannot say kind of drive up the highway. How is driving
Right.
up the
Right.
highway going to perpetuate the spread of the virus? You have
But
to
when you say
behave.
these emergency regulations, are you talking about emergency regulations in terms of a state of emergency, or are we talking about generally or something?
No. I'm talking about now. The state of emergency, there are
Right,
emergency
now.
regulations, which,
Yeah.
if you are not sure
Right.
about, you can go and you can find them. I wonder if I can get the link. I'll probably
Right.
try to get the link to you
Okay.
as well.
We could probably throw that up on the High Stream page tomorrow if we can get a link to it.
Exactly.
Now,
Yeah.
now the thing about it is that it does come down to this whole thing about the capacity in the hospitals and all that. But it is as if we wait for that to happen in order to say, okay, well, that's the last chance now. You want to say something, Leslie? I was saying, edging to say something there.
So just coming back to the definition, Fayola, where it said exceptional situations that justify some limitation. So we talk a bit about exceptional situations and we understand the different parameters of the SOE and whether capacity of hospital and whatnot is what we're going to use to ease off those sort of restrictions. But bringing the conversation now to limitations. Limitations now start to bring up the question of consequences, Fayola. If people doesn't comply with the SOE, so this is like what Kota talking about on the highway and that kind of, what kind of consequences to the SOE people have to face if they breach the SOE? Is it that you're getting jail? Is it that you're getting fined?
Okay.
How,
So,
well,
you are getting fined. So we'll start off first. So firstly, under the Regulation 8 of the state of emergency, police officers can arrest you without warrants. That is, arrest without warrants, meaning that the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force has been granted police powers. So essentially, they can arrest anyone without a warrant who they reasonably believe has acted or is acting in a way to kind of compromise public health or public safety, right? They could use whatever force is necessary to arrest you in these circumstances like that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What? Really? As in, whatever force is necessary?
To subdue you, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull it up now, yeah. The officer
But
may use force as may appear to him to be necessary for the arrest or to prevent the person's escape.
Right. Well, okay.
That is a part of arrest. So in a normal arrest circumstances, those would be stipulated, You would, if somebody trying to fight you or trying to run away, you would have to use the necessary force to subdue them. So that power is given to them, right? You get $250,000 fine and you can get 6 months jail time for breaching the state of emergency regulations, right? Anyone who contributes to regulation.
So them people that was sweating and so on the highway, them could get 6 months?
So they will get, you could get a fine and imprisonment, but they normally don't do that. But the fine is $250,000 and imprisonment of 16 months. So that's the charge. Part 18 of the regulation states that,
So serious consequences.
So essentially, in circumstances like this, where we have the government acting, the law enforcement, essentially, they cannot be held personally liable for anything that they do. Okay? So anything that they have been done, it can be under lawful direction, cannot be brought, they cannot be taken to court for that. Once it was under lawful direction. The times of the curfew hours can be changed by the government, by the commission of the police, which is, weird. But I think before we finish, I think I didn't touch on one of the most important parts of it, which is essentially what happens is when we have a state of emergency, we transfer the powers of the legislature to the executive. So as I would have explained before, the legislature. So I explained before that the legislature is responsible to Coral. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by the questions. Okay, so I should ignore that. So essentially, it's a transfer from the powers from the legislature to the executive, right? The reason being is the executive is in the best placed position to assess the risk and deal with it in the appropriate manner. Right? So they would be able to make laws more efficient and more effective, meaning that they can make it faster because we don't have any deliberations on it, and it can be effective because it can be pronounced right away. Right? And the reasons that they need these powers, they will explain, is because we need these powers in this circumstance because we have an emergency situation and we must be vested with authority to make decisions in an expedient way. And that is what justifies essentially this whole thing. And this is what is the thing. This is what the rule of law seems seeks to check. It seems to check the authority of the executive or any of the branches to be operating on its own. No, the executive will be operating on its own in this instant. And I think this is the fearful part. This is what, is the precursors to dictatorships and authoritarian governments. But we will know by virtue of the fact that we have a state of emergency, we do not have an authoritarian government, right?
Because we needed to go into that in order to get that mode on. You know what I mean?
I can't hear you, Kato.
Oh, I don't know why. All right. Well.
I can't hear anything.
Okay, I'll take off my camera probably.
Yeah.
All right. You hear me now? You hear me now? You hear me now?
We hear and seeing you good. So.
Okay, I think.
Viola, can you hear anyone at the moment?
I think we should take off our camera.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think Faye should take off her camera. If she hear anybody else, somebody else tell her now, take off the camera. That might be drawing it on her side.
Maybe. Viola, can you hear? Not sure she's hearing anybody right now.
You hearing anybody, Fayola? Take off the camera. Take off the camera on your end, Faye, if you can. Yeah. I think that might help on your end, because I know on your end you're getting a lot of a delay and stuff, and that might help. Any change with the hearing now, Fayola?
I'm hearing you well now.
Okay, yeah. I think for the rest of the episode we'll have to leave her camera off too, because on her end she getting most of the problems too now. So we don't want to risk that. All right?
Yeah.
So that as you said, Fayola, and I mean we are not, as someone was saying, it's not like Duterte, if that's how you pronounce it. You know, we don't have a track record of that level of totalitarian grip. And when you do get the SOE per se, you know, you run with it. But it is kind of sad that you see a gradual set of measures that you're going to see.
That's right.
You see, and it's like, okay,
understand these things is creeping things, you know.
Yeah,
I don't understand. So
you let people see, and you know, it to me it is like, more than anything, I find it to be very disheartening and disenchanting because of the fact that we are seeing these measures, albeit necessary, and as we all know, it is because of the healthcare system. I am mean to sound bad, and I am mean to sound harsh, but if people dead on their own, of their own volition, they don't care. All right? At the end of the day, if we die in their care, then they care. Okay? And we have a health system, and you know, we have for all intents and purposes, free healthcare and whatnot. We are a nation that has that
well, we are not free healthcare too, but we have not free healthcare as well. Whereas Torian was saying recently, in Canada, they already have private healthcare. It's just healthcare now, you know. But anyway, we know that how the main problem any nation faces is that their hospitals can't handle the stress. All right, and our main thing forever is not getting to that point, but. There seems to have been some kind of lapse in judgment and vision, in that because things went down, we say, okay, it only if it starts to get bad,
we go
Right.
put in something, and it get more bad, so we put in more thing, and it get more bad. So and I was like, well, it get real bad. So state of emergency is like, yeah, but this would have happened anyhow. You take it now because this is the nature of the virus we're dealing with now. Why
Correct.
is it that the authorities also think this God is a Trinity thing?
Is it that
is a real
you
thing?
think that you think their behavior is reactionary?
It is reactionary. It is reactionary.
Yeah.
It is very reactionary. The only thing they did proactive was close the border, and that did not seem to work because over a long period of time, there were other ways for people to enter the country.
Well,
You know?
yeah. I mean that's in an. I think stating that we would have closed our borders was a misnomer because obviously at that point in time, being an attorney that dealt with persons in the detention center and stuff, I can assure you that on the very day that borders was closed, that proclamation was made or that declaration was made, persons came in here. Persons came into Trinidad. And I remember making a post and saying, but listen, how is it that we're going to secure? And I don't want to say anything on this subject too much because I don't want to be perceived as xenophobic because that is not my intention. I think for me,
yeah. Continue.
I appreciate the fact that we need to assist. We need to assist our neighbors. That is something that we have to do. But what I'm saying is the way that we went about it might have possibly been done a little better. I am saying that the CARICOM could have convened. We could have gone there. We could have said, listen, we've looked at our numbers. We've looked at our resources. We've gotten feedback from the various government agents, departments. This is how much people we can accommodate comfortably. We can take in 100,000, 200,000, how much ever. Jamaica, how much can you take? Barbados, come, let's make a commitment from everybody to take some people. When we have reached our quota, we ensure that the persons that we have helped can, also help their members by helping set up some sort of camp or some sort of something there for them from the border from which they are leaving. I think that would have been a more, proactive way to look at the situation because I am saying that we need to help, but we need to help in so much as we can. Because if it is we, for instance, disregard all of the extraneous variables that we need to take into consideration, finance, space, whatever, we are going to place ourselves in a situation similar to our neighbors. And we would be of no assistance. How could we be of assistance when our resources itself would be placed at an extreme strain? I think that the situation could have been handled a little bit better. But of course, I am not paid, the kind of money that persons who would be able to come up with a much more, realistic view. I think that would have been a more responsible way to handle the situation rather than to, let's say, throw a blind eye to it. Because if you are in this, if you would have been privy to some of the information that, some attorneys are privy to when you deal with situations of this nature. You know that there are persons who are being paid money to be. It's not a free thing. You can't just go there and jump. Everybody wants to move, so obviously they're being paid, and that's a lucrative.
It's a system going on there. There's a whole system taking place there, and we are. What I was jumping in to say right through. Sorry, is that by the way, people, we are tackling that next week. We are tackling head on with the Venezuelan refugee situation. We are going to have members from the UNHCR and people with that background they're going to come in on to talk to us, so look out for that. Now, and we'll talk about that. And as Fayola said, there's so much different things state now. There's so much that's going on that we don't really know. What's going on is that we want to now bring up the
So one thing, Cutter. So the last part of this thing, Fayola, has to do with rights and freedoms, and that's why I keep bringing back up the Philippines case because the Philippines is a case where it's all went wrong.
I'm real sorry. I am so sorry, but
not here. Take off the camera there. Let's see. Take off the camera.
Right. Talk to me. You hearing that?
Yes, I am.
We should be in the dance. Nice, right? So yeah, what I would say is that the point that why I keep bringing it back to the Philippines is that that's an example of where the SOE would have gone wrong, and that
Mm-hmm.
it was something that what had happened was what they call a creeping SOE. So in the
Mm-hmm.
last part of this definition has to do with rights and freedoms. And
Mm-hmm.
rights, from my understanding, is has to do with human rights. So you're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
rights of speech, rights of movement, rights of consumption in terms of foods and drinks. And part of the creeping SOE that they brought in there was that they started to limit what was shown on TV, so that the state actually started to control certain aspects of the media and so on. Is that covered in our SOE in terms of could they start to control like freedom of speech and so on?
I think essentially the only rights that can be abrogated from, must be strictly required of the exigencies of the situation. So, for instance, you cannot, if you are trying to, if you are having a state of emergency in this instance to protect against the spread of the virus, you cannot then say that persons can't have freedom of speech. That in itself is not strictly required. Any derogative measure cannot exceed the extent required of it by the exigencies of the situation. So your rights
Right.
themselves are not necessarily suspended. They're only suspended in so much as they relate to assisting with the state of emergency and essentially getting us back to a place where of normalcy then.
Correct. And of course all of that, Fayola, I would take it is means within reason. And why I say
Of
that is
course.
because I'm not
Proportionality.
exactly because one of the things that Duterte did with the state media is that he made an announcement for the entire nation to disinfect the face masks with gasoline. So
Ooh.
that actually went for about 3 months. And because they had control of the state media, it became a big scene and UN got involved and whatnot. So that is why, I just wanted to understand in terms of the state, in the state of emergency, what level of rights, is taken away. And to me, I think even though, yes, certain human rights are suspended or
Mm-hmm.
limited, it
Mm-hmm.
is, in my mind, done within reason.
Exactly. Yeah. So you remember we have to look at section 10 of the Constitution. So section 10 of the Constitution says that the state of emergency may be extended from time to time by resolution, which is supported by a simple majority. Right?
Hmm.
Um, but no
Correct.
extension can exceed 3 months. And in aggregate, it cannot exceed 6 months. Right?
Right.
Oh.
So
Six
we
months. 6 months
have
is the most.
Yeah, so we have a stop check here. We have the Constitution saying,
Mm.
listen, these things are not ad infinitum. They come to an end. They do not go on forever.
So I
So,
guess
and
what,
especially in a, yeah.
sorry, what let's see worry about is, so let's say they extend again and we hit the 6 months. What is to stop them from extending it further? Like, really and
Well,
truly, the Constitution is just a piece of paper.
Correct.
well, not really. I think the Constitution is more than a piece of paper. If it wasn't for
So
the Constitution, people could, governments and other persons could do exactly what they please. And in
right. So
situations like this, they can't really do exactly what they please. They have to justify it. Now, the justifications may not necessarily be above, well, it may not necessarily be reasonable justifications or justifications that we think are reasonable in these circumstances. But,
right.
that therein lies the problem. Do you
So so
understand?
so something to like to go beyond 6 months, Fayola, that would be something they will probably need some extra, like almost like a unilateral, not a
Exactly.
unilateral, but like a unanimous support across government and opposition to support or
Yeah,
something like that.
possibly.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't really want to give out wrong information because I don't know what would happen in
No, no,
circumstances
no.
like that. I mean, I can refer
Yeah,
very
but there's some
fast to the
structure or
legislature.
some reason. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
To the let me just refer fast to 10 to make sure that 10 does not stipulate. Look at any time. No. So on a cursory reading of it, it doesn't state what will happen in circumstances like that. I don't think that they can exceed. So,
Mm.
however, that no extension exceeds 3 months, and the extensions do not, in the aggregate, exceed 6 months. So,
Right.
what they're saying is
Mm.
essentially you could only have two back-to-back 3-month extensions.
Curfews. Right.
Yeah.
Aggregate
So,
now.
Yeah.
Right,
So when it
correct,
is
right.
when
Really
it is the
mad.
president, when it is the president has declared, make a proclamation, it has gone to parliament, she has presented it to the speaker, it remains in force for 15 days.
Right.
Mm,
So once it drop, it had to last for 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
Or it doesn't have to last a 15 because they're saying here proclamation, it can be before its expiry, the proclamation may be extended, right?
Right.
And also
Right.
it may be, I just saw some, it may be
But is it?
revoked at any
But is it?
time.
Okay, it could be revoked at any time. Okay.
Yeah, by a resolution.
Uh,
It must be supported by a simple majority of votes in the House of Representatives.
I know it was a lot for you to unpack, Fayola. So thanks so much for going through all the
Yeah,
different
that's
parts
real
of it there.
clarity.
I
Now we
hope
want
I
to.
Yeah,
kind of made
Yeah,
sense though, because I know
no, you
I
did.
know we
absolutely.
didn't talk.
Oh, you
Okay,
did. You
you'll
did. Definitely.
understand. Yeah.
But now we want to
Yes.
open up the floor to the audience to really bring their questions now and ask Fayola and us as the panel that we could all chip in because some of these things are in such gray areas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, bringing the
So
heights.
ask Fayola now. What are the burning questions you all have? So we have one from Jillian Emerald here that says, "Is the state of emergency a way to give the police power to go into private homes to stop activities like Zessa parties?"
Well, I didn't even know they were still having Zessa parties, but apparently it's
It
having a
always
lot of
have.
them.
It always have. It always have. It always have.
My God, yeah, but yeah. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That is exactly what it is. Because
Yeah.
if it is, we look at what I would have explained to you guys before in relation to the powers of arrest, right? And essentially, those powers of arrest under Regulation 8 of the state of emergency is essentially drafted to prevent for this very situation, I believe.
Right.
You know, they're
I hear
saying that
you.
the officer may use force as he appears necessary
Yeah.
for the arrest to prevent a person. But essentially, what they're saying is that you have to act in a manner that is prejudicial to public health, public safety, or public order.
Yeah, and that's what parties are at this point in time. Having a good time with a lot of people is prejudicial to public health, as you want to call it.
Yeah.
So and
So
we
yeah,
a lot
so
of
like
people.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
But that is not the only. Yeah, well, I guess that is the state of emergency. I mean, I hope eventually that human beings evolve, right?
Right.
Where we don't have to be policed to this extent. It's frustrating, you know.
Well, if the enforcement of the SOE, says Swati, or the SOE itself gets out of hand, who do Trinbagonians go to? What can Trinbagonians do if it gets out of hand?
Well, Trinidad and Tobago is subject to certain international obligations under international instruments of law. So, for instance, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So where it is, Trinidad and Tobago is a signatory. So, okay, so how to explain this? Essentially, there are certain systems which have dual systems. So essentially, if you are a government and you're going to you're signing a treaty, an international treaty, it must come back to Trinidad and it must be passed into law before it has we can't say before it has any substance, but essentially it has more weight when it is converted into our legal domestic legislation, right? So it's given more weight of force because we have a dual system. So essentially, any signature that a government official makes on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago, it has to be ratified before it becomes law. So we have certain international obligations that we are signatories to, that would have a supervisory kind of role over us. And the good thing about that is certain of these international we have seen what happens internationally if you do not adhere to, these laws that speak to human rights and the protection of your citizenry and stuff. You can be sanctioned, and then other stuff tends to happen. So you'll be sanctioned from these international bodies. And reprimanded. And I think essentially, if we are told by a more, anyway, I'm sorry, forget that out.
No, we understand. We understand.
Yeah.
We understand. Yeah, they can't do what they want. They can't do what they want.
Yeah.
I have one question, Viola. So we're talking about powers of the government, all those kind of things, right? So we touched on earlier that there are people within the country that are able to go directly to a supplier of some sort and get the Pfizer vaccine. Is it possible during a state of emergency for the government to mandate, if things were to get real out of hand, the government to mandate private hospitals take public patients?
Well, no, I don't think. You see, essentially, there would be a Private Hospitals Act. Yeah. So in that act, there is currently no legislation to mandate private hospitals to undertake any particular action. You know. So in other countries, for example, in the USA, there's a Defense Production Act, which specifically allows the president by federal order to mandate, let me say, production of vaccines and things like that. But we do not have a corresponding, they would mandate private persons. Yeah, so we do not have the equivalent here. So without amendment to the Private Hospitals Act, I don't know how that is possible. Saying that, though, in a state of emergency, you know, I don't know to what extent, you know, they can go about suspending the rights of a business. You know what I mean? Of that individual. So I don't know how they can do that. But I mean, I could think creatively and think as a government, I would be like, listen, if it is my whatever they're calling their parallel system is overburdened. I mean, they could make I don't think they can force, no, not in relation to what I've read so far.
Right.
On the Private Hospitals Act.
Do you think that, and I mean, I brought this up earlier, we didn't really get to talk about it. It's neither here nor there for some people, but for me, I think that it's worth talking about. Do you think that we should have had the 2 holidays this week, or could we have postponed them just like we postponed Carnival and all of that? Seeing that it's a state of emergency, would that be normal to do?
Okay, I really was caught off guard by that 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. curfew, to be honest.
Right. And then there was as we would have discussed and people would have pointed out, like Emir Crown, that there was a bit of a looseness in the jargon used and in the punctuation of the amendment or whatever it's called. But but my thing.
Well, I mean, that issue that you would have brought up was an issue to do with the rule of law. So in the rule of law, that's one of the issues. They must have certainty of law. Because it can't be arbitrary, it must be certain. Otherwise, you don't know what you're adhering to. You don't know what the law is. And to be honest, for most civilians, it's quite difficult to read the legislation and understand what the hell they are asking you to do. Right. Even for an attorney, at times it's quite difficult, you know, to read the legislation. You have to read it, and as after many readings, then you come to the understanding of what exactly it is being said. So, you know, in relation to what Mr. Crown was saying, I believe he was talking about the necessity of the law to be certain, you know,
right?
That is an essential component.
And personally, do you think that we should have stopped vaccinations during the SOE, during the holidays? To
be honest with you, I haven't even wrapped my head around that 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. scenario yet. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm really trying my best here to tone my you know, my opinion, my responses based, you know, try to be, you know, as politically correct as I can be. But I really don't appreciate my but just generally as a person, I have very little deference for authority, and that is a characteristic that I think I was born with. I have very little deference for authority.
Don't worry, Fayola. No, you are alone. All our ways rebels. But just one last question there, Fayola, from Nick JL. He said that no one can be sentenced without process, even during an SOE. While the executive arm has the power of arrest, the judicial arm still has to uphold due process. That is that, and I just want to make sure that's the case, like across the board, no matter how much the SOE systems creep, that has to be maintained, correct?
Yeah. So I think what it is it's just a delimitation, you know, of your rights. Right. It's not a complete and utter suspension. I remember reading some jurisprudential arguments about it. There were 2 arguments, a Kelsian argument and I forgot his name, but this guy was more contemporary. So essentially, one of them was saying that the state of emergency is extrajudicial, it's outside of the law. And Kelson was saying, no, that doesn't make any sense. I agree with Kelson. Essentially, what Kelson is saying is that the state of emergency is a result of the laws that we already have. They cannot exist outside the laws because the laws that we have afforded their existence. Just like the parliament can essentially revoke or I'm looking for the correct word, but essentially the parliament can undo. So the parliament has legislated like this, and the parliament can legislate to undo what it has legislated. So parliament supremacy must be emphasized.
All right.
Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
This
So the
question.
parliament. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. This question from Said. What weaknesses of our constitution or laws has this pandemic or SOE exposed? And what should we fix when this is over? Is there anything in your professional opinion you think that is weak in terms of our constitution, and this pandemic is opening up a real can of worms? Is there anything that we should pay attention to in a very, very urgent manner when this is all over and we can regroup and rethink?
Well, I was hoping that this was an opportunity for us to revise a lot of our laws. I remember reading what it is. I think it was the immigration, Act. My God, it refers to people as dotage, stupid, retarded, invalids. A lot of things. It seriously needs it. Yeah, it seriously needs revision, right? A lot of the laws need revision. There's the law. For me, what I think this has exposed is that in times of emergency, we would need to have certain emergency powers. And in order for us to feel comfortable as a nation that those emergency powers are being used, we must then ensure that there are adequate checks and balances and that persons are being held accountable for the decisions that they make, right? So for me, I think that some of the things that we need to look at, for one, is that I do not feel comfortable with the police currently with the way that the police operates. I do not feel comfortable with it. I've seen the police cussing people, mother so-and-so out on the side of the street. I've seen a lot of atrocious behavior from police officers. And I'm thinking that, they're just like us, They are us. They are, you know what I mean? But we need to have proper codes of practice. Where it is, I go into the police station. I remember when I went there, I thought something was wrong with me because I would have studied, I would have learned the British procedural, the British procedure essentially. So when I went to the police station, I'm like, okay, can I have some disclosure? What's going on? The police is looking at me like, what? They don't even want to give me the bare minimum information. So I am there in the police station and I'm like, wait, what? So I have no information at all upon which to advise my clients. So then the only thing I can advise my clients is to answer no comment, because I have not been given enough information for my client for me to advise my client at all. You have not given me any information. When I go in there, I'm like, who's the officer in charge of my client? A lot of these things where my client is alleging he had this, where is it? There is no order. If it is, we have to reform. We first have to reform the issues that we have. I think reform needs to come first in policing. We need to ensure that our police have a code of practice. This is absolutely, you all don't know the issues that I have to face when I go into a police station. It is absolutely ridiculous. Until sometimes police officers come outside with me after I had to, completely lose it in the police station. In certain instances, police officers will come outside with me and apologize and say, listen, I understand. And that is really, ridiculous and whatever. There are no proper codes of practice. And I'm sorry, but I will not allow the police officers to be policing me arbitrarily. Right? Because that is exactly what is happening. It's a horse, and we are notorious. We could make videos. Outlining how brutally police will beat you if you go into the police station, especially if you have no consequence and you give trouble. Oh my God, we have those little. If it is you are known to the police and you have no money and you have no consequence, I am sorry for you. They will arrest you at random.
I think we definitely need to have you back in Fayola at some point
Correct, that's right.
to talk about that in particular, because sooner than later we're going to have a big issue with the police again as usual, and there's going to be some situation where it's going to be hot, and we'll bring you in right about that time so we could talk about this properly, because they know
And
like
to be fair, too,
while it's hot.
before I say anything, to be fair, the police also needs they also need to be afforded the right training, and they also need to be afforded the right budget.
Yeah,
They
definitely.
also, you understand, and I think that the more we realize that we are in the situation we are in, not because of the level of crime, people will commit crime anywhere where they are not caught.
Exactly.
Okay. If you are not getting caught, you will commit a crime from now until I don't know where.
Come
One.
on.
And two, the circumstances that exist right now societally will dictate that criminals are born, and criminals thrive, and they exist.
Well, according to some people, I think laws don't fix anything. But anyhow, let's close up. Let's see. You have any closing remarks for the table? Any closing remarks for the people?
I just want to thank Fayola so much for coming on board. It was such a fantastic discussion. I find myself so much more edified about perspectives that I wasn't too sure about before. Thank you to the commenters as usual, the amount of stuff. And Fayola, as Kotta say, we definitely would want to have you back. We have some hot topics in June to close off the quarter. I mean, we have Colin Kaepernick's new book coming out on defunding the police and abolishing jails. So we're going to do an episode on defunding the police. So we definitely want to reach out to you on that. And we have one to close the border and that kind of thing. So, looking forward to it.
Okay.
Definitely. Well,
guys, thank you so much, all.
We want to thank Torian for handling everything on the behind the scenes there, because right now we do not a lot of damage control with the technology. But we'll come to that point one day where we all have it smooth and running. But that's how it goes. We are international right now, as we have everybody on the screen right now is from all over, so it does prove some problem. But I want to thank you for your time, Fayola, and for all the work you put in. I know that's how you make that time for we, and I'm real happy for it. All right, I know right now you have a million things you could be doing, and that you have to do still. But I'm really happy that you spent this time with us, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Okay.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It was nice. I'm having conversation with 4 people. It seems so novel in this time,
Yes. And this is the time, right? This is the time where we need to keep in contact with each other. And we want to thank the entire community for being here tonight as usual. We are going to have our episode next week, Don't Cross the Border, where we are going to talk about the Venezuelan migration situation in Trinidad. We have guest Amanda Chukwan, and I got confirmation today we'll also be having Matthew Ramsawak as well. So we have 2. And with that being said, I want to thank everybody for listening in. I know tonight, we could have been doing all kind of different things and taking a rest and getting up for tomorrow for the jam, the at home jam by yourself.
Oh, okay.
Right? Yeah. The at-home jam by yourself. All right. But thank you all for spending this time, for Larry and Nick and everybody. And Swati always is, Saeed, Jamak, the whole posse. We see Bechan in his zone. He says sanctions feels like you being bullied. All right. That was thank you for that. Thank you for that, Bechan. So everybody from all of us here at the Heights Room, thank you so much for tuning in. See you guys next week. Thanks, Fayola. Okay. Blessed love, everybody. All right. Bye-bye. Good night from the Dolphin. Yes. Blessed love, boy. Later.